What is up, podheads? Back with another episode of the Podioslave podcast. My name is Tony, joined as always by Anthony and Nate, and my blood type is Krylon, Technicolor type A.
Oh, you caught me off guard. I was expecting us to just catch up a little bit, chit chat, and then you jump into it. Yeah, I love this, and I got that reference for those keeping track at home.
Yeah, as always by Anthony and Nate too threw me off. Like, oh, I mean,
yeah, you're back, baby.
Anyone not paying attention? Yeah, dude, I've always been here, never left.
There's gonna be people who click on this episode, and it'll be the first time they've listened to us. So we appreciate that first and foremost. But at the same time, we're Podioslave. There's three of us. We've been doing this for close to 250 episodes. All of us have taken a little bit of a hiatus here and there for stuff, and we're back together, baby. We're doing it.
Yeah, the sea was always warm.
Yeah, and true to nerd form, the hiatuses and like mishaps and backstage brawls, like
we didn't have brawls.
I don't want no brawls. But I was gonna say the relatability is interesting because we kind of see the podcast as a band, and life happens, shit's crazy, life work balance, all that stuff, and it applies to any passion, but podcast, band, and in the legacy you're talking about, we played clubs. I think we're like in the theater tier now, which is cool. I think it's the sweet spot, to be honest.
We leveled up, apparently.
I think so. I mean, I'm kind of like the Scott Weiland coming in and out of the band once in a while, but I think theater is the sweet spot. I think arenas are too big and clubs are cool, but theaters is where it's at. So,
I think I'm with you. I think with arena, just like a band, the more people you get under the umbrella, the more opinions you get.
Drink.
Oh shit! I didn't even plan that. Drink, guzzle, guzzle. The more opinions you get, the more people you're trying to make happy. And I know just at the level we're at, we get enough of that.
We do, yeah. We do get some nice interaction between from people all over the internet for stuff we put out over the course of almost 5 years, 4.5 years. So we appreciate anybody that's checking in, and we do love to just nerd out on a weekly basis, and this is cheaper than therapy, as they say, for us, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And talk about music with you guys, and we're gonna do that again tonight.
And this is gonna be a fun one because we usually do like 25 years of this album, 20 of this. This is what, 24?
Yeah, 24 in like a month. Yep.
Yeah. Oh wait, when did it come out? October?
Yeah, it turned 24 in October. I can tell you the exact date here. October 24th. So I think we're recording this on November 25th, if Inside Baseball again. And yeah, so 24 years and 1 month and a day since this record dropped. No, absolutely not.
Do you guys want to get into it? You guys want to chit chat, or just jump right in, right?
I'm ready. I think we're going to talk about Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory. I sent that in a group text the other day. They just put a record out. They're top of mind. They've been all over the internet the last couple of months with their new iteration, but this is what obviously popped them off, and a record that we lived when it happened. We were 15, 16 years old and impressionable, so we were like, let's dive into that.
Yeah, appropriate. Screw the 25. We're going 24. We make our own rules, but also just the I don't know. There's like this urgency. Like, oh, dude, like someone brought it up. I don't know if it was you or Anthony, Tone, but like I was like, yeah, no, for sure, no, we should definitely deep dive this record. But it didn't cross my mind before. I don't know if it has to be a 25 or 20 or 10 year anniversary, but like the off, like we do what we want kind of thing makes it extra special. Like, yeah, dude, let's do 24. Fuck it.
The nice thing about doing this whenever we do it is a year from now, when it does turn 25, we'll just post it again.
We're just good. Repost it. Really. So before we dig in, because I'm sure we'll run the whole gamut: memories, context of the time, legacy, observations, all that. Before we do that, when was the last time you guys listened to this record before preparation for this?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm not sure. I listened to Reanimation a couple times, but I had not listened to Hybrid Theory on its own front to back in 15 years. It had been a while.
Same here. It'd been a while. I actually put By Myself on a playlist like 2-3 years ago because I love that the chorus, the Chester's chorus, and we'll get into that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I put on that one specifically, and of course you hear Crawling and In the End Out in the Wild a lot, but I think it's same for me, about 15 years.
Damn, 15. I don't know about 15 for me, but I do know for like records like this, bands that we grew up with, a lot of the times that I'll revisit the records in particular are in anticipation for seeing them in a live format. And that's really the only time I'll revisit something, with the exception of a handful of bands where I'm just always, they're on constant rotation. But I don't think it's been 15 years, but I want to say, I wish we had the actual data, but I want to say likely 8 years, which is unfortunate. Wow. Unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while for me. And my wife and I will occasionally go on like a road trip and listen to music, and sometimes something pops up or a conversation has started, and I'm like, because we're similar in age, right? So she remembers some of the stuff that we listened to growing up, and when it hit, and this was obviously a record that hit pretty big when we were all in high school, and she remembered liking Reanimation. So she and I have listened to Reanimation like on road trips 3 or 4 times in the last 5 years. So that one's come up, which is random. It's that one of all the Linkin Park records that we listen to, but this one's special, and it obviously launched this massive career. So,
all right, what was the first song you ever heard by Linkin Park? It was obviously off this album, but what song was it?
The first single,
One Step Closer, All Day. Yeah, that was the first.
I was gonna say, me too. I think because I had Kerrang magazine, but I think it was still that single.
Wait, hold on, you Nate owned Kerrang, a subscription to Kerrang.
Kerrang, man.
Kerrang out of the UK.
I think there's an episode back there. There's an episode back there where we lugged those around camp a couple summers ago.
Yeah,
back there in the archives. 120, 121, something right around Blothar.
4 issues a month. It's like Rolling Stones on steroids.
Was it really? It was dude, weekly?
Weekly. It was fucking epic.
Damn, dude.
And you got like CDs with it and all sorts of cool shit. And it came in a plastic wrap, so it was like carded. Dope.
This album and imagery from this album absolutely would have been hanging in your bedroom.
Oh yeah,
totally. Full moose bedroom, buddy.
Yeah, fake RIAAA plaques and all.
Dude. Yeah. If you know, you know.
I think you told Lejean you did that, and he thought it was sick, right?
Yeah, he was in.
We'd have to recall, Tony. Yeah, if you're verifying that it's likely true. But yeah, I had like 7 of them on my wall. Like,
hang on, let me pull up the video. I do still have the video of our Lejean interview.
I already was a big Seven Dust fan. These guys, we laugh better all the time. I used to make fake RIAA plaques on my wall with like pictures from Circus Magazine with like the home CD and like kind of what's in the back of your background right now, like fake ones of those. And so I was a fanboy even then.
Could have sent me one of those. It took forever to get these damn things.
Yep, there it is. He said it.
So One Step Closer. That was our introduction, and I got to be honest with you, I pinned them from that single as just your typical nu metal band. The video was very nu metal. Chester's verses are very nu metal, and then the "Shut Up When I'm Talking to You." I was like, I liked it. Like, I'm not saying anything negative. It was to me, that was no different than like a Shovel or Reveille. Like, it wasn't this pedestal band that they became. But that was my first impression.
I would agree. Like, I remember liking the song, but then it was everywhere, and I was like, I don't need to hear it again. And that happens with a couple songs in this record, as much as I still love them. But I was like, if this is what they are, I'm not sure I'm going to buy in. But then I heard the record and was like, oh my God, that was just to get people on board. And there's so much here, and there's going to be more coming down the pike. And yeah, it was, I'm with you. It felt not industry plant, because they weren't, right?
It did though. It had a little of that. But at the same time, like, they had already, I mean, they had Zero or whatever Mike's band was before with members, before Chester joined, and then Hybrid, when they were Hybrid Theory, and then they had to change their name. But it's amazing how quickly this one blew up. Because it was on MTV. That's where I think I saw the video. I think that was the first time. And then I allegedly downloaded the rest of the record.
No.
And it might have been before it came out. It might have been. And my version had like glitches in the songs, and when I listen to it now, I can pinpoint them exactly where I would expect the glitch. But when I listen to like the record on Spotify, they're not there, obviously.
Right? Yeah. There needs to be a name for that.
This generation has no fucking clue what I'm talking about. But back in the day, you could allegedly download stuff, and it wouldn't be the final cut. It's not like, the final version. It was sometimes demos, shit was cut off, there'd be glitches. Who knows how they got there?
or you'd burn a copy off your friend whose copy wasn't all that immaculate to begin with, so then maybe there was a skip on a song and you expect to hear the skip on the song when you listen to it digitally now, and it's not there.
Or your buddy missed a whole song.
Yeah, or
'Cause
had
you're
it
downloading-
sequenced wrong. Yep.
You're downloading each song. It's not the whole album. I don't know if people need to remember that.
I think everybody that's listening to this probably remembers that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Two things. I didn't come into this thinking we all had the same sentiment on the first Revelation on the record. Like I thought we all would have different variations on One Step Closer, the single, and we are all fully aligned. Like I heard that song, I saw the music video, and I was like, this is cool. And Twan with the deep dive or with the deep cut on Shovel, like it was in that vein of like, yeah, these are dime a dozen. You know, they're all
Totally.
like
All day long.
rap rock, 2 vocalists, all that stuff. Shovel is an amazing rap core band from back in the day. Anyone listening, but that was the impression I had. It's crazy that we just are all aligned there. I thought someone would be like, no, dude, off the bat, I knew. Like I wasn't there, and as soon as I saw the video, I was like, this is cool. The video actually maybe tarnished the song just because it was too like everyone
Of
do
the
this
time. Yeah.
head dive at the same time, like a Stained video. It's like, all right, I've seen this. Like, okay, cool. I'm waiting.
15, 16-year-old Nate's like, come on, guys, I'm jaded. I've already seen this shit.
But I gotta say, because I think we were all 15, 16. I definitely thought that. I definitely thought this was of that ilk. It was cut from the same cloth as, it wasn't a stadium caliber band, which they became.
Yeah, right. Pretty quickly.
So that was first impression. I'm trying to think here. Did you guys see them in the moment? Some at the Civic Center.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't go to that.
That was a little later.
Yeah, no. So definitely not in the moment because I don't think they came through to us until that following summer, right? Was it a day off fest?
Yeah.
Type of deal at the Civic Center when Ozfest would be in Mass, but a bunch of bands would make the drive up north and play Portland, and you wouldn't get the whole tour, but you'd get 6 bands sometimes would come and play. It happened a couple years in a row. I think Rammstein was on one, Slipknot was on one, right? There were a few of those. So I missed that because we were on vacation with my dad and we left the state, and I was like, I want to go to Linkin Park, and he's like, sorry, we'll go to Chicago. I was like, well, that's stupid.
Lincoln who?
Yeah, I want to see Linkin Park, Dad. Come on, man. Which, whatever, it's fine. I ended up seeing him later on, but I didn't get to see him until Meteora, I think the Meteora tour.
But it just shows you like that. The album drops in October of 2000, and then 7-8 months later, I think they headlined that Civic Center because it was Papa Roach, and I have to look at the lineup. It was some heavy hitters, but I'm pretty sure they headlined it.
That is, I think we may have put it on the bloopers or the extra stories episode last year. I won't say who, but Rob said somebody was told not to poop on the bus, and they took a shit in a bag and had it backstage and was showing people. I'm not going to say who. But there was somebody on that show that did that. Yeah,
and to confirm to that point, it wasn't Linkin Park that headlined that show. It was a different band.
Who was it?
In that scene. It was Papa Roach that headlined that gig.
Yeah, I mean, that would have made sense. They were huge at that point, too, because Infest was 99? Or 2000? 2000, I think.
It was also 2000.
Earlier in the year. Yeah.
It was earlier. Yeah.
It was Mudvayne, Disturbed, Papa Roach, Drowning Pool, and Linkin Park. It was August 2001. Yeah.
Man, that is a nu metal wet dream.
Oh my gosh.
That's a stadium nu metal wet dream right now.
Oh my God. I remember, I think I've talked about it with you guys, at least in private nerdery group text, but I remember that show was coming back when Ozfest was up and, on fire. And I wanted to see Ozfest, but talking about like not seeing them in this era in particular was to the fact that they just didn't roll through our market, although they did for that show. But in terms of like clubs and theaters and Ozfest, like straight up, we had it was called Off Fest, but I was jumping on a plane to go to Wyoming for like a 4-week.
You missed it too?
Expedition, yeah.
Damn, dude.
I was in the down. Where the hell are you guys? Come on.
I was hiking fucking in the mountains for 4 weeks, but I remember thinking like, fuck, dude, I'm gonna bail on this 4-week expedition because I want to go to Off Fest and see this show. And I almost pulled the plug, but I'm happy I didn't. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that like Maine just got skipped just a little bit, so we didn't get like those hybrid theory like club shows and theater shows. We just didn't, and we didn't have the license or ability to get to the shows in the market closest, which would be Boston. by like literally like a year, which really sucks.
Yeah, this was all just early enough for us that it had to come to our town, and even then there was a chance that you wouldn't be able to go because we were just young enough that like we needed a ride from our parents or an older friend to bring us in town. Rob, wherever Rob was at that point, he didn't do it, but we didn't know him yet. But yeah, it was cool that stuff did come through, in the summer. But it was always when I was on vacation with my dad, so I just ended up missing the day off fest anytime it would roll through.
Well, the crazy thing is, as we all know, I kept all my ticket stubs and I have a list of every show I've ever been to. There were weeks in high school where I went to like 2 and 3 shows. It's wild in retrospect.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
crazy, man. But they rolled through. That was like, for a band at that point in time, we'd have to look at like the sequence of stuff, but like Crawling was definitely a single at that point. I don't know if In the End was, but they
nope. Crawling and Paper Cut, and we didn't get In the End till October of 2001. A full year after the record came out. Yep.
Crazy. And they had, so Nate, you said Papa Roach headlined that show.
Yep.
Linkin Park was maybe 2 or 3 on that list. So like they had Crawling, I think catapulted them, You want to dig into Crawling?
Well, and Crawling doesn't come out until April of 2001. So you're right. I think if that comes out a little earlier, they might flip flop with Papa Roach. Remember we heard that story from Phil from Taproot he told us about how they were touring with Papa Roach and then Papa Roach blew up in the moment and they went from being in a van to being in a tour bus. And it was
crazy.
Like, oh, look what happened to these guys. Like Last Resort hit and everybody went nuts. And had this happen, had they dropped that song in January instead of April, that might have been the same thing.
I love all of it too. Between Papa Roach, Linkin Park, all the bands, like there's a sincerity to this scene that's unfucking deniable. And listening to this record in prep for this, it's like, it wasn't, I mean, like I think we kind of alluded to it earlier. There might have been a little bit of industry plant type stuff going on, but for the most part, like this was brick by brick, and Linkin Park, the fact that they were in their heyday, and I know they're a new iteration now, but like they're playing amps, and arenas, but they were opening for Papa Roach, which Papa Roach for the most part is like I don't know, I'll call it 2000 cap room type band. So it just shows you the ebb and flow of the industry,
especially in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, Crawling. What do you think, Twan?
Let's just jump right into observations of the album. So I listened to this back a lot in prep for this episode, and Crawling. One thing I've always thought about Crawling is that's what opened the floodgates for them. If you just ISO on the verses, it's not far off from Savage Garden at all.
Wow.
It is.
I didn't think of this. All right,
ISO
cool.
on Chester's verses, and it's the most top 40 approachable music. And I think that's what really like I would love to see if you look, and I didn't look, but if you looked from August, from when One Step Closer came out to April when Crawling came out, the rooms they were playing, I bet you'd see a sea change in the spring of 01 when Crawling hit, because that was just a whole shift for them. And like that's a song that my parents know, and they knew it back in that moment, right? They didn't know One Step Closer, and they still don't know One Step Closer. But you put on Crawling, and that's where like kind of the industry plant comes in my head. But it's a great song. I'm not taking anything away from the song, but it's just a different thing than really the rest of the record.
Yeah. See, I kind of lean more towards In the End being that. I feel like.
Well, I think that fits that too.
Yeah, well, I think In the End is the absolute like, and it's wild to me. It didn't come out until a year after the record was out, and it was their 4th single. Like that song has radio hit written all over it. It is by far their most played song, 2.3 billion streams, compared to, everything else on this record doesn't sniff anything over 660 million. So, and most of them are less than that. Crawling is 2nd, Paper Cut is 3rd, but that song, absolutely massive song. Still played everywhere to this day. That's how I feel about In the End, is how you kind of describe Crawling.
I think if you looked at the stair steps of their evolution, there would be a massive leap
stair steps?
after In the End as well. Man, after this episode, we need to like fact check all this shit. But
I bet you're right.
I also don't remember Paper Cut being a single at all. Not on the radio, anyway.
No, and that song
was a video though.
Yeah, there was, and that song, I don't remember that being being a single. But at that point, we were already listening to the record pretty regularly, and everybody had it or had a burn copy, or were listening to it in the car, and just they were one of the bigger bands for us at 16 at that point, right? So that checks out that we probably wouldn't have maybe paid attention to it being a single, because we already kind of had been, it's the first track on the record. We were listening to it all the time. So
well, what I can say is, again, Kerrang reference, and just kind of paying attention to what was going on in the UK and Europe in general. Yep, drink. In real time, drink again, is the fact that Paper Cut was a single that was released in Europe at the time. So there was almost like a UK single cadence that was different from North America. So I think that's where that came from. And I only know that because we were talking about downloading earlier, and downloading like the music video, which actually said in parentheses like UK. So it was like specific for UK as like a single, and the promotion element that happened in that market. So if we
allegedly downloading.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't remember actually doing it, but I remember people doing it at the time.
Yeah, I remember people getting banned from Metallica and having to download, like you said earlier, Twan, like songs that were spelled incorrectly, and I may or may not have been one of those people. But irregardless.
Oh man, yep.
But yeah, like talking about those songs, like you said, first of all, the Savage Garden reference, that's like all
it's
time.
On point. Think about
it's
it.
On point.
Listen to it after this. It's, you strip out anything you know about Linkin Park, ISO on those verses, it's not far off.
I love it because it's genuine, and there's some parallels there. And I just wrote, like, I did that thing again today in prep for this, like just listen to the song and write like 1 or 2 words. And for Crawling, I just wrote in parentheses anthem. Like it just is an instant like anthem, fucking boom. And in the end, to your point, Tone, I just put sincerity. Like there's a sincerity in that song that's like, it's undeniable. Like you hear those lyrics and you're like, unfucking deniable. And other songs, I have other parentheses if we're going to go track by track. But those two that we're referencing, that's what came to mind. So Savage Garden and the sincerity of In the End are, just ballistic, single worthy songs.
Well, just massive, massive, massive rock radio songs, right? And they don't necessarily need to be rock radio songs. They just, at the time, that was what was selling, and that was what was playing with kids, and it made sense for them to be rock radio songs and not necessarily pop hits. This band became a pop band, obviously. They became massive, and this record started it, and they continued on with the Meteora cycle to being, one of the biggest bands in the world. But they had a ton of pop sensibility, and they never really hid from that. And I don't think they ever really hid from nu metal either. I know Mike Shinoda's a nerd. Just listening to him talk about other music and being, a part of a bunch of different creations, whether it be visually or musically, he's super into a lot of different stuff. I think recently he said he liked Strife. Like he's all over the map when it comes to that. He'd be friends with us if we could ever get him. But yeah, they never really, I don't think they ever really shied away from the fact that they were a massive pop band on top of being a rock band.
Well, now that I think about it, so this was on Warner Bros, right? It was on Warner Bros. Like that whole entity knows exactly what they're doing in terms of sequence generally, at that level. Think about if they led with Crawling. I don't know that they would have got the metalheads.
It would have been tougher. Yeah, it would have been tougher.
I think they led with One Step Closer to showcase, hey, 2 vocals, 2 vocalists. Well, actually, how much is Shinoda on One Step Closer?
Not much, I don't think.
Not much. Okay, so maybe I'm backtracking.
And he's not really on Crawling either.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I remember in the early days of like them, it was always just 2 vocalists. So like you said, we dove in. I think as soon as we got One Step Closer, we dove in. We knew what it was. But one thing since we're talking about tracks here, Paper Cut, great opener. And I noticed something the first time while prepping for this, have you noticed how it layers in the instruments? It's the drums and it's doo-doo-doo-doo, and then it does the scratches and then the drums. It's awesome. It's fucking awesome. Like,
well, and that guitar riff is fucking awesome. It's like a siren, right? I love when guitars do that, because it's giving you something that's familiar, but also something done differently with a guitar or whatever. And that is an absolute like, hey, we're here. Turn it up. We're here. You're coming down the block. You can hear us coming.
Dude, in terms of parentheses, song first things that come to mind type
Nate,
stuff.
it's parentheses. There's an H in there too.
Parentheses. Paper cut. I just put intro perfect for all the reasons that you guys just mentioned, which is like draws you in, organic, and the layering of everyone kind of like, all right, one by one, let's all come in. And it really is like a perfect intro to the record, but I'm assuming that's likely what they were opening the shows with too, just because it just kind of it sets it up. Yeah.
Great song to do any of that. Open a record, open a show, announce we're here, all of those things. And you're right, Anthony, and I hadn't really thought of it that way because I've listened to it a million times. It's one of my favorite Linkin Park songs, but the layering of the instruments coming in and into that, like Mr. Hahn kind of forward scratch, backward scratch thing.
Yeah, the swirl I call it in my head.
Cool. Yeah, it's perfect.
Well, and that is a perfect intro to that band because they have that, the layered intro. Then Shinoda gets into the verses. Chester comes in, it's like I'm Paranoid. And I think they layer back and forth. But then at the end, it's like the first time you kind of hear Chester ISO. The sun goes down. I feel the light betray me.
So
all time.
Such a great line.
Oh, and like I think that was the first time where I truly felt like, all right, this guy's a little different. He's special. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you didn't get it in One Step Closer. I mean, Shut Up When I'm Talking to You. Like we said, that's something that would have come from Shovel or something. You know what I mean? It didn't separate them. And then you hear Paper Cut. It's probably the second song we ever heard from them. And it's like, whoa, okay.
That line is so good. I almost started the episode with that line. Like, hey guys, it's nighttime. The sun goes down. I feel the light betray me. I almost started that. I was like, it's a little dour. I'll start with something a little more fun. But that was in the running for things to start the episode tonight. So I'm right there with you. Great line.
Another thing I thought about today is just like, I know we're jumping all over the place, but this record sold 1 million copies. And in my head, I was like, was it warranted? Did it deserve it? And yes, because it crossed, like they played Ozfest, obviously we just said at the time, but Crawling was probably on top 40 radio. And where I landed my whole thought process is like, it was super approachable. I know some of the songs are heavier than others, but like a lot of like By Myself, that's very heavy. Mm-hmm. And then I went down the nerd rabbit hole. I don't think there's a guitar solo on this whole album. And you know what? I don't even think there's picking.
Yeah.
Besides A Place for My Head, the din 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 din, and I don't even know if that's guitar. But this is new metal guitar music. I don't think there's a solo.
No,
it's wild.
Right. Yeah. Well, it had that pop sensibility. That was the point, right? It was going to beat you over the head with what it did really well. That you were going to like not lowest common denominator, but in that vein where it's to get as many people under the tent as possible, and they did that so quickly.
Well, you remember? I don't know if you guys remember this, but like years ago, and I don't even know what the forum was. It was online somewhere, but someone was like impersonating a Linkin Park guitarist, and it was just the dude with headphones just going zzz, zzz.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's just the occasional downstroke of guitar. But again, it's the sum of all its parts. You ISO on any of those, and yeah, it might be simple, but the collection of it is like, and then you get Chester who brings him to a whole different planet. I'm geeking, guys.
You are geeking, and it just brought me to like 20 different points, especially in this scene.
Go off, Nate.
Go off, King.
Which is, there's a reason for it now that you explain it in depth. It's like, especially when you think about the scene back then, like bands like, well, let's call it new metal in particular, Limp Bizkit, Wes Borland is like virtuoso. So like it's very much like Wes focused, and obviously Fred and John Otto, phenomenal drummer. But it's not the case with this band. And that's why I think there is such a differentiator where it's like, well, like Linkin Park, rap rock, sure, Limp Bizkit too, same time, but like the level and like difference between those bands are like polar opposite. Even though they both begin with L, they're both new metal, they're both rap rock, all that stuff. You can kind of be passive on it, like, oh, it's all the same scene. No, not really, man. Because like you said, like Brad Delson, it's just very simple guitar licks with drums, with DJ Hahn, which I got a side note, DJ Hahn's work on this record is like John Bonham and Led Zeppelin. There's so many fills going on.
He's so good.
Like, if it wasn't for those fills, it wouldn't be complete. So everyone's putting in like their 15-20% to make it a full, to make up for that West Borland, like, okay, who's up next? Okay, John, oh, now it's you. It's like, no, everyone's going at the same pace with like their 20%, which is fucking cool. It's like almost like this fairness. Like, okay, everyone just do
It's
their
like a symphony, really.
Yeah,
good point.
exactly.
And Shinoda he really was kind of the conductor of all that, like breaking pieces down, putting pieces together in different spots. It's funny, Nate, you say the Mr. Han was awesome. I love Johan's work on this record. I love that they, on the EP, shit on having a DJ in the group.
What was the line again?
The line in Step Up is a DJ in the group just for credibility.
Oh, that's right. Just
shitting
on
rap rock,
metal,
essentially. That song, all that song does is shit on rap rock, and that's exactly what they are at that point, is trying to break into the rap rock kind of scene, but way more pop friendly, I would say. But yeah, man, he does fill so like a good drummer would, or like a good bass player would, in spots. I'd put him part of the rhythm section, right? He just finds spots to put these little accents on this record that make it whole. Without them, it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be as good as it is. It needs all of those little intricacies that he adds, all that little flavor, all that little spice that he added.
Well, and Chester, when he's not singing, if you listen throughout a lot of this record, and I didn't notice it till today, I've lived with this for 24 years, as we said, there's Chester harmonies in the background. And I noticed it on the last song, like first and foremost. Near the end, you can just hear him, and I'm just ISOing. Like, I wish you could do a track by track of what each person is delivering, because I think you'd be shocked. I think you'd uncover a lot of stuff. As Nate says, it's a record for the headphones.
Dude, I'm happy you said that, because, again, similar to you, like, we're all huge fans, but there's just things you miss. I didn't even know that, not by listening to the record via headphones, but watching, and I've always done this since high school. But back then it was Napster, Scour Exchange, and stuff like that, allegedly. But now YouTube, and just watching like these performances and watching Chester harmonize in like certain parts of the songs, like, oh, I didn't even know he was jumping in at that point. That's cool. And it does layer it. It's like Alice in Chains. Like, you need that, or you don't necessarily need it, but it definitely gives it more. I don't know. It just adds to it a lot.
Just fills it. And if you don't know what we're talking about, listen to it in headphones. You will pick up something, whether it's Hans scratching in the background you never noticed, or even there's probably a term for it, but things going from left ear to right ear. There's a lot of like, I'm sure, audio games and audio magic that happens with this one.
Well, and that lends itself to the conversation about Warner knowing what they're doing, right? And there's a couple things that I've since lived with now for 25 years and thought to myself, in the moment, they play me like a fiddle, and I'm okay with it, because it's music stands up, right? But remember the EP in '99, the Hybrid Theory EP, that everybody wanted to get their hands on, and it was hard to get your hands on, but at the same time, they were kind of putting it out there on the internet to be downloaded a little bit. They didn't care so much. Obviously now it's easy to get your hands on. It's streaming a bunch of places. You can buy it on vinyl, whatever. I have it. But at the time, like when Hybrid Theory drops, we all get super excited, dig into it. We're listening to it all the time. And then you find out there's this 7-song EP or whatever that was out a year before. And it's got My December, it's got Step Up, it's got High Voltage, all these other songs that you're just like, man, that all sounds kind of cool. And you find one of them online, you allegedly download it. And now you're like, I need the whole thing. That was what we did at that age. They knew exactly what we were looking for and put it out perfectly to get us to kind of to pull us in and give us that kind of little hit of drug that you need to get back into it.
Well, it's funny you say that, because in 2000, because that's when this all happened, High Voltage was not on the album. I know it's on the extended version, but back then it was a Napster type of thing, but we all had it and we all knew all the lyrics. It's just crazy how this happens. And honestly, there's no equivalent now. There's no equivalent at all.
It's
about
hard to do that now. Yeah. You can't do that now because people just put a song out, or people put, a teaser. There are bands that try to tease and do a good job different ways of doing that, but then you get bands that just drop whole records, or artists that just drop whole records too. So it's because the internet, it's a little different than it used to be. This was early internet, and playing the internet against us because we were on it and nobody else was really on. Our age is the group that was truly learning it. and figuring out, oh, you can go to the record store and buy a CD, but you can also find this stuff on the internet and like listen to it. And everybody has High Voltage, even though it's not on the record. You're like, wow, there's more Linkin Park. Like, I didn't know there was another 7 songs we could listen to. What? How can I get my hands on these?
Damn, dude. I just went down a crazy like time warp machine type scenario because I didn't realize until this very moment how valuable that piracy era was in terms of being a true nerd or music geek, unbeknownst to like the labels, the bands themselves, on the fact that like unless you were in that market, call it Los Angeles, you were never going to get that demo cassette or CD handed to you. So the fact that you were able to retrieve it via online really just expanded your reach exponentially to a point where it's like, dude, we like all these songs, like, yeah, like you said, High Voltage, even My December, or I guess My December was to be on the record, but like I heard it before I bought the record for sure, allegedly. But I think it's an element, it's a tool that was disregarded, but now I think I would hope that labels and bands alike would realize that it was the ultimate guerrilla marketing tool that was unrealized at the time, but
I think they realized it. I think they realized it. Yeah.
Well, now with Spotify especially.
No, I think they'd realized it with the EP and then immediately dropping the record. Like they were putting the EP on the internet in spots, and sharing it in chat rooms or sharing songs in chat rooms. I think they knew what they were doing. Well, I don't think a lot of people did that, but I think
they might have known with this, like this album. I think worldwide sold over 30 million, so it outkicked the piracy limitation.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you think, well, how did it do that? I think there was, again, for being like the biggest band on the planet, like they had LP Underground, like the fucking artwork was phenomenal, the record was great, you know, for everything that you knew about the band, it was appealing. Like Chester it seemed like the nicest guy, and same thing with Shinoda. You know, even back then you knew that. So, yeah, did it help them or hurt them? I don't think it hurt them. It definitely didn't hurt them.
I think it helped. I think it was a sort of target. I mean, we were the target. We were the mark. I'm okay with it. I've come to grips with it. I'm fine with it. I think that happened back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to say though. In terms of the band, I think they might have been in line with that because they were maybe even in that era, like I think you were alluding to it earlier, like they kind of purposely did it, kind of like a Radiohead in Rainbows type chess move. But the machine doesn't operate that way. A loss in terms of P&L, a loss is a loss. Like, fuck, dude, that's another 100,000 records that we just didn't make a dime on. That's fucked up. And they're going to make it on tour.
Hey,
and we don't have a piece of
that record though.
That's the thing, right?
Exactly.
We all bought it, and then me as an adult in 2020, when the 20-year anniversary drops, I buy the whole thing. I'm like,
bought it again. Yeah,
I'm back, baby. Let's go. Now I have it on vinyl. Cool. So yeah, no, they continue to play me.
You know what? If I was one of these major label execs back in the day, you know what would have been a chess move? Is somehow make CDs only playable for a few years. Make the materials like deteriorate. So you'd have to rebuy. Because I know cassette tapes, like actually some of my I used to film on high 8mm high 8 film. And that, I think it only has like a 25-year, 30-year shelf life, because I remember Hate56, the videographer, him doing a call out saying, hey, if you have tapes from this era, like this version of tapes, send them to me so I can preserve them, because they're not going to work pretty soon. So that's what that's big brain talking if I was working for a label.
Yeah, and it would have, that I'm kind of surprised they didn't, because everything now, I mean, think about it. The stuff that we all go buy, and now we're tangenting and probably going to get a label from Spotify, but the stuff that we all go buy today in 2024 doesn't last as long as the stuff we bought when our parents probably bought in 1990 or 1970. Some of that stuff is still kicking, but the stuff we bought today ain't going to be kicking in 15 years.
Well, CDs do scratch and records do scratch. So
that's a good point.
It is part of the play a little bit. I mean, I bought some of these CDs like 3 times.
Yeah. We also didn't treat them very well either, right? I mean,
I mean, you're driving with MapQuest while changing a CD out of a binder. It's tough, dude.
I'm gonna go full conspiracy bag here. Didn't the units? It was shipped units. It wasn't sold units. It was shipped units, right?
Totally. Yep. Totally.
Taylor Swift.
That applies.
Conspiracy bag.
That applies to a lot of industries.
Auto pen.
Hey, I got something for you guys. The artwork, Frank Maddox, on another level.
Yep.
The
Yeah,
optics of the
former
band.
Podioslave guest. Former Podioslave guest. Episode 32.
I
We
was
had a
just going to
great
ask you.
combo with him. We had a great combo with him. He's super genuine, but they bring in him who Deftones' White Pony was out at this point in time, right? But Frank didn't have the legacy he has now back then. But he was still with Warner, still creative. The optics of the band crushed at this point in time. Although in the end video is kind of, the CGI is kind of whack, but
yeah, but at that point they were already they were already on their way to being what they were going to be. Like it's a year later, and yeah, the optics of this, and it's over my shoulder for the video heads that might maybe see it on socials here in a little bit, were awesome. And the spray paint and Frank's kind of vision for some of that stuff and Mike's vision for some of that stuff together it's still standing the test of time, right? Like you see that, you know exactly what you're looking at, and it was iconic in the moment, and it is still a thing. And that's gonna be really cool. And we should have him back, and we should ask that question. I'm not sure if we did it the first time we talked to him, it being over 200 episodes ago, but how do you feel about putting stuff out that is still this just massive, everybody knows what it is, that's something that you created? That's gonna feel so cool.
yeah, you put that soldier on a t-shirt, and I think any millennial knows exactly what it is.
Or the White Pony. Yep, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Nike swoosh. I actually wrote that
Swoosh,
note down.
Come on, man.
Swoosh, swish, swoosh. You know what I mean?
Put some respect.
I knew what he meant.
Yeah. Sorry, Phil Knight of Nike. But I did write the similar to you, the optics on the band and Maddox contribution to just the whole presentation of Linkin Park, like everything about it. Like I remember, like it's very high school-esque. Like you're writing the logo on your like notebook to kind of mimic Maddox, like the LP, the different versions of LP, the L with a backwards P, call it a callback to Korn, whatever, and different variations. I'm even wearing the t-shirt right now with like the kanji type lettering. You know what I mean?
Oh, nice.
So sick. I love that. Like that era. Yeah.
Dude, everything. Like Linkin Park, they nailed it. And all like you just wanted the merch, you wanted the posters, all the stuff, just because it did capture the new metal era. But if anything, I think they defined the new metal era in terms of optics. Yeah, Maddox slayed it. But for this band, it made more sense than any other band in the scene. I feel like they like really captured it perfectly. And you can, credit Maddox, but I think the band too. If it wasn't for what we mentioned earlier, like everyone giving their 20%, I don't think it would really align as much. So it is very much proper.
I don't know the genesis of the name. I assume there's a Linkin Park, Lincoln,
yeah.
right?
Well, they were Hybrid Theory or before, and then they had a band come after them that was named.
And then they switched to Linkin.
Had to switch it. Yeah, they had to switch it. I don't know why they came up with Linkin Park. That's actually I should have looked that up.
But I'm curious about. I mean, the spelling was a play on the time of the era. Like that was the new metalization of this.
Yep, absolutely. Korn with a K. Yep.
Yeah, that was
Limp Bizkit.
But it worked, and honestly, like Hybrid Theory would have worked too, right? I mean, it would have. But Linkin Park, like, it's not until now that I look back and like I look at the goofy spelling of it. You know what I mean? It's just we've accepted it. Same thing with Bizkit. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and it was easy to type and write, and it was phonetic, right? So that kind of worked. It was definitely the new metalization of the spelling of words and bands and all that. Yep.
Well, I'm remembering now. See if you guys remember this. There was a rumor that they picked Linkin Park so they could be next to Limp Bizkit in the record store. I remember that distinctly now.
Smart. Yeah, I like that. If that's what they did. I wonder why it was Hybrid Theory. Well, I mean, I know what Hybrid Theory means, and prepping for this, they melded the heavy with the pop, but that was the band name, which is interesting. And had they not had somebody come after them, I wonder if they would have been do you think they would have hit to the same level? I mean, the music was there, so they probably would have.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Are you wearing a Hybrid Theory t-shirt? Maybe.
Yeah,
The
maybe.
music's good. I've worn worse.
Yeah, it's a good name. It's funny you say that. So I remember reading an interview about System of a Down where they chose System of a Down. They wanted something with an S to be next to Slayer in the record category at a record shop. So that's cool.
That's interesting.
SL and SY. I don't know. That's a big gap.
When you're coming, and we've had this conversation a billion times over the course of the life of the podcast, but when you're trying to come up with a name, sometimes there's not a lot of thought that goes into it, and sometimes there's way too much thought that goes into it, right? So maybe this was well, shit, we lost our name. This sounds cool. Let's go with it.
Let's talk some deep cuts. One of my favorites is By Myself. I think it has, for my money, it could be peak Chester on that chorus. It's all too much to take in. Untouchable. I think he soars. If there was any doubt at all in like the nu metal genre, like who the vocal king is, I think like songs like this, and there's other examples throughout the record. It's stuff. It's choruses like that, or it's just like no one else can do it. No one.
Well, that's the one that at the end, him and Shinoda kind of go back and forth, right? That when they come together to do the chorus or like a pre-chorus together, so fucking good.
Dude, I actually circled 3 standout tracks for me, and I remember recalling what the standout tracks were then, and it still applies today, which is interesting. I thought maybe my preferences would change over time, but no, that still takes number 1 is By Myself. And I remember because it was so heavy, I wrote for this one Heavy Therapy, which obviously we've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, but like it hits that 100%. And like what you said, Tone, with the back and forth vocals, it's fucking immaculate, but just such a fucking great song. I think that is the best song on the record. Obviously
really?
Heavy.
I think it's the best song on the record?
I think so. I think it's just every time I play the record, which obviously we talked about earlier, it's been a long time, I can't wait to get to that fucking song.
Yeah. Well, there's a grit to it too. Like the way it opens, dun dun dun. It sounds like it's out of key. It's not, you know what I mean?
Well, you were talking about first single, like in the era climbing up the ranks. I'm actually very surprised that wasn't the first single. Like if we're gonna just come out and be the, well, 12:30
One Step Closer. Yeah.
Yeah, 12:30 slot at Woodstock. Ozfest 2000. That's the shovel type song rather than One Step Closer. But yeah, my 3 tracks that stood out was By Myself, Runaway, and With You. Just boom, boom, boom. And it's still, I remember writing those down then, and now it just still applies. So yeah, I can attest to By Myself.
Runaway is an interesting one because I think like the shut up when I'm talking to you, this has a little of that, like maybe a little too much of the time, like gotta run away. Yeah. It's very like on the nose. And there's another song that kind of fit that for me. Let me look at the track list real quick. Points of Authority.
Yeah.
That's the replay there isn't there for me 24 years later, but By Myself, A Place for My Head, Forgotten, like those all still hit. I'm not skipping those.
The riff in A Place for My Head is so good. I love Pushing Me Away. Like that's a great album closer.
Last track, totally. Magic, baby.
Yeah, that song is so good. And I love Paper Cut. Paper Cut's a great album opener, great kind of career opener. I know they had the EP already, whatever, but those 2 songs, great bookends, great. Probably 2 of my favorites from them on the whole. And then A Place for My Head, I think, is probably my 3rd favorite on the record, just because I love that guitar riff. And then the dun dun, yeah, it's just so good.
Pushing Me Away is all-time closer. I think near the end when they get into the we're all out of time. This is how we find how it all unwinds, and then Chester comes in, sacrifices hiding in a lie.
One, he sounds so good there.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I mean, we're not like huge production heads, but this is perfectly produced. Like it's timeless. I mean, as far as like quality, you'd never know this was 25 years old.
No, and it was definitely a product of the time. This is in the similar vein as probably when they're using Logic and all that, right? It's right around when that starts to really pop in music, and you can cut and paste pieces, and you're not on the actual recording stuff. It's more computer driven. This record fits in that for sure. Like it's, and them as a band fits in that. Like listen to everything they've ever done. There's a lot of that.
I'm happy you mentioned the production value. I know we've talked about it on here a lot, and I think we're all coming from just like a fan standpoint in terms of listening and like comparing it to records that are maybe produced in either a different way, and obviously that's subjective, but also just is it appropriate for said record? And I think the production value on this record is so crystal clear and needs to be. If it wasn't, if like, there's certain bands, call it Metallica, where they focus on like one thing or the other, and that's why there's a big riff in that band all the time with Lars and James. Is like, no, turn the volume up with me, and then blah blah blah. It's like, well, everyone, again, back to that 20% share on all members, like it's very equally distributed in the production. It's crystal clear, and in headphones, it's fucking like clear as a bell. You could have like the worst headphones, and you're like, damn, this is clear as. I feel like I'm in like a, an alley, and everyone is echoing and reverberating through the hallway.
Mm.
So production on this record is immaculate. So props to, who is it? Gil Norton, I think.
Don Gilmore.
Don Gilmore.
Gilmore. He did. It's funny. He's a big name, but you can't find a ton on him. But he's done some big records. It's funny, Nate. You said the production, it had to be big, and I totally agree. Because I think it was you maybe that sent the demos of the record.
Yeah, Nate sent those.
Yep.
To me, that is not a stadium tier band at all. Great songs, the tracks are there, but it lacked the polish. It lacked that finish that you get with this record. You get it on Meteora, and then you certainly get it post Meteora. It had to be big to get to that stadium level where the demos weren't.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I noticed in listening to it. I'm like, this is super, super produced for a band it's their debut. But again, on a major, and were found to do this. Like, it was, whether or not they were quote unquote industry plant, I don't think there's some of that with this, but they've stood the test of time. So it's not that they're not that, they're very talented musicians, but there was a clear, as Anthony likes to say, intentionality to making this big, because they knew this band was going to be big, and they were, and they ended up being absolutely massive, and playing huge venues almost a year in till now. Like there's a reason there's still Linkin Park with the new record. It's because all the money that would have been lost had they just changed their name and had to play smaller venues to figure out what they were again. You put it under Linkin Park banner, they're still playing massive venues.
You know what adds to it too? Meteora kicked ass.
Oh my god!
Yep.
So the momentum continued. The optics of the band continued. Like that record. I mean, I think Hybrid Theory's better. Meteora stands on its own. After that, I kind of moved on personally. I'm sure the records are great, but those two back to back, they stayed on top. It wasn't like, there was no sophomore slump.
Yeah, great record. And I remember, in the meantime, we got Reanimation, which was the kind of remixes of Hybrid Theory. And I remember getting it the day it came out. It was summer, and we went to your house and hung out in the basement and listened to it, like on blast on your dad's stereo in the basement.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. That. Like, we were all just so, like, that's how much of a hold this band had on us at that point. Is that they're going to put this, essentially a remix album for their first album with a bunch of new people. I mean, Jonathan Davis was on it, Aaron Lewis was on it, Executioners, Pharoah Monch, Charlie Tuna, like all kinds of people, Steven from Taproot, everybody kind of coming out of the woodwork, a new metal and hip hop blender to make this record. And I really like that record still. I've listened to it. I listened to it in prep for this just because I wasn't sure if we'd touch on it. I'm bringing it up because I like it. It was cool to hear those songs reimagined because I've spent so much time with the original songs.
What about the spelling of the tracks on Reanimation?
New metal, baby.
Of the time.
New metal, baby.
Yeah, that was new metal squared.
But yeah, they did something that I don't know had ever been done up to that point. And I don't think has been done since. And if it has, it probably bombed. But they just remixed their album and their B-sides, and it hit.
Yep.
Added
some different words here and there. Yep. Brought in some other people. It was so cool, especially in the moment as a 17-year-old. I'm like, oh my god, this band who's taken over kind of, one of the biggest bands for us as high school kids is giving us these 20 songs, reimagined with strings and like slow intros and all this shit. Oh man, I still love the Crawling version from that record. I think more than the original.
Well, this was the breadcrumbs for the Jay-Z album, really.
Yeah, and then
totally.
I mean, shit, Collision Course, man. Like, what a cool idea. Right. What a cool idea. And to have those two bands, or Jay-Z and then Linkin Park, do it together, fucking massive.
And you all bring up such great nerd points. I think that's why we love doing this, right? It's just, you really dig deep on what it all means and what it all encapsulates. But something that I wrote down and just like started thinking about in terms of this record and music in general is the fact that like music is like fashion. I know we always talk about food analogies, but like you don't actually know if it's going to hit. You're just taking a risk. And anyone that invests in that risk does see something, but they're a dime a dozen, especially if you're a record label that has, at this point in time, so much fucking money, disposable income. I mean, I've been to the dinners. I know how the card is
I've been
the
to a
black.
couple too, yeah.
Yeah, the black card unlimited. Like it's
in
fine.
that era too. That
Exactly.
was
And
the fucking the gold rush.
that's what I mean. Like Linkin Park, the rap rock new metal thing was happening, but there's still a risk. Doesn't mean Linkin Park is a slam dunk, but they're willing to bet on it and to differentiate from even what was happening to level up that much. There's a belief, but also a sincerity on it has to really permeate on a different level. And I think similar to like the grunge scene, I always make this comparison just because I think there's only certain times in music history where this happens. So I'll call it a 10-year cadence, maybe. Is Linkin Park does stand alone. And I don't even think I thought this then, but now revisiting as a early 40s adult, realizing like, oh, there is moments in history and music where like there is standalone. And like the grunge scene, and I wrote this, and you don't have to agree with me, and anyone listening definitely doesn't have to agree with me. This is just where my head went, which is the Holy Grail, or the four bands that kind of represent the scene in the most genuine fucking way. So you call it let's just mash grunge with new metal. So I put Korn, Nirvana. I put Slipknot, Pearl Jam, Deftones, Soundgarden, and Linkin Park, Alice in Chains. Those are the goats. They defined that genre for so many fucking reasons. But there was so much going on. There were so many other grunge bands. There were so many other new metal bands. And promotion, yeah, sure. Money, major labels, all that stuff. But it's still a grind to get there. Like we were talking about, Linkin Park was opening for Papa Roach. Papa Roach doesn't crack the goats, even though I fucking love that band. I think Jacoby is one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. But there's a level up. And whether the Warner Brothers saw it or not, it doesn't really matter. Like you still have to do the work.
Yeah, still have to be talented, right?
You still have to be talented. And timing is fucking everything. So props, props to them, props to the band, props to this era. It's just perfect timing, really. I mean, it just happened to happen, and I think that's such an interesting concept to think about.
Well, that made me think, is there another vocalist in this era, this genre, new metal, early 2000s, that you would say has a great voice? They're not known for their voice. He's known for his voice, and he's known for the long screams, and the fact that he could do both. Yeah, that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where some of these other bands, I think you might have had a screamer, you might have had a singer. He could do both, and in a genre where there's not a whole lot of singing.
True.
Fred Durst, he ain't doing a lot of singing, and when he does, it's okay. I mean,
I have one. I don't think he's as good as Chester. I have two. Lejean's one. The other one is a band that I don't think the three of us love a ton, but respect that they were what they did and how big they got. David Draymond, great voice.
Yeah. He's a singer. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A singer and a screamer, great voice.
I could agree with that. But he does have a great singing voice. Corey Taylor would be the one that sticks out, other than Chester Bennington.
He's got a good one too.
That's a good point.
There's a few of them, but
all right, you guys have proved me wrong. Okay.
I think Chester's still one though, above all of those.
Yeah.
For me, anyway, I would tell you that he could do both so well, and he wasn't just I'm a great screamer. He wasn't just I can hit these notes and I sound good. He did both, and there aren't a lot of those people that could do that. He's one of two, three, four, five. There aren't a lot.
Yeah. So what do you? I mean, we're 24 years. What is the legacy of this album?
I had a question that I wanted to ask you guys, and the legacy of the album I think kind of ties into it because I think it's happening now. Music is so fractured today, right? I mean, there's so many things that happen, so many things come out. We were fortunate enough to grow up in a time where it was a little less fractured, but it was starting to fracture. This record of this band brought a lot of people together towards a genre of music that we already kind of liked, but at the same time, they became the kings of it. And are there kids today that have that? I think they might like Linkin Park. I think some of their kids today that are 15, 16, 17 that are finding Hybrid Theory, that are finding Meteora, and not necessarily something new today. And that, I think, is the legacy of the band, is that they're still super fucking relevant. New record just came out, whatever. I'm not even just talking about that. There's still a thing for people to find again and have be their thing 25 years later. It's crazy.
I'm gonna piggyback on that. So I watch a ton of YouTube, and the algorithm knows I like reaction videos, whether it's old people reacting to stuff I like or young people. And as I was doing a deep dive for this album, there was a YouTube channel. They had like 20,000 followers, so they were big, relatively big account, but it was two younger kids. They were probably 17, 18, and they reacted to the whole album, and they spliced it so they wouldn't get demonetized. They only played a few seconds in a row. They fucking loved it. I don't know what their musical taste was, but they head bobbing the whole time. They said, I think the thing they were most impressed was with the fact that Shinoda could actually rap.
He's damn good too.
And he's good. And Chester, his choruses were all time. Like, that was the two takeaways. They listened to the whole album. They loved it. And I got to believe, if we were 15 now, this is the equivalent, think about it, of something when this dropped coming out in 1980. That shit would have felt dated. To a young kid now, it might feel of the time, but I don't think dated. Because think about it. Every modern, and I'm using quotes, metalcore band clearly worships Linkin Park. Clearly.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
Damn, so much to unpack there, but
unpack it, baby. We land this plane for us.
Go off, King. Go off, King.
Amazing assessment. First of all, two vocalists. I think I've talked about it on here a ton. The dual vocalist thing is very much of the time. I think it really took off kind of 2000 going forward. There might have been some dual vocalists before that I can't really think of off the dome. But for Linkin Park, like, you got to think, like you just said, Mike Shinoda, amazing MC. He reminds me of that simplistic, relatable Stephen Jenkins Third Eye Blind type relevance. Like, I can see what he's saying. It's easy to listen to. It's not too aggressive, but it's fucking dope. He's got bars.
And he's got
That's
flow.
sick.
Yep.
And flow. And it's like, it fits the song perfectly, all that stuff. And then you got Chester. So you're talking about legacy and like relatability and listenability and all that stuff. I was going to say Phil Anselmo, but that might be a little even too deep. I'm trying to think like legacy wise where it fits in. Maybe Zach De La Rocha. Like, it's that edgy but sincere, but it is mainstream, but it's quite not at the time, especially. And
it's relatable.
It's relatable. Yeah, I think the relatable element is kind of what we're getting at here at the core. So in terms of legacy, man, Linkin Park, if you're coming into it now, our kids 10 years from now, like, discovering it, it's like, yeah, dude, I was there. Led Zeppelin style. Like, fuck yeah, dude, I saw them back in the day. They were fucking dope then, they're dope now. But it hit something that is quintessential. Like, you can't deny it. It's just good music,
Well, it resonates with people still. I mean, they're a massive band today, and without Chester, which is terrible, and they'll never be what they were because he's gone, and he was such a force in music, period, whether it be as a frontman of Linkin Park or just as a human being. But damn, like, there's not much out there that could pull off what he did and what they did as a group with him involved. I'm happy they're still doing stuff. I like the singles off the new record. It's always going to be, I need Chester, I need this record, I need Meteora. Some of the songs off the later stuff I like too, but yeah, that band still relatable today, I think, even though we've lost Chester and don't have that piece of it, but they're still so huge. Like, they still found a way to still be a big piece of the culture 26 years later from when they started.
I agree. Yeah, I think you nailed it. They blended something that not many people did well, and it's not too heavy in any direction. There's never a point in any of these songs where I'm like, oh, this guy again, or like, oh, here comes the big chorus. No, there's none of that. I'm in. Yeah, untouchable album. We save the deep dives for the special albums. This is a special one. 24 years later, I've listened to it a lot over the last few days. It is still great. Yeah, there's some stuff I skipped just because we've worn it out, but
yeah, I don't need to hear In the End again. It's okay.
There's Yeah, I'm with you. I did skip it today. I listened to the album twice today, and I skipped that. But then there's stuff I'm still picking up, like the Chester harmonizations and stuff. Like, I think I knew they were there, but I ISO'd on them today. I was like, I don't know. This was like a blockbuster film that was so well done that it's undeniable. Yes, big budget, get it. Huge producer, get it. Big team behind them, get it. It still rips.
Still hit the ball with the fence, right?
Yeah.
Dude, those harmonies that you're talking about, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, because I don't think it's something you catch on to at a young age, but as you get older and like music appreciation gets down to like a molecular level, you're like, oh, like that's how it's done. So like call it Lane Staley and Jerry Cantrell. That's Mike Shinoda and Chester Bennington. Like, oh, like if he wasn't backing him on those vocals, there wouldn't have that layering that really amplifies those, really the energy or the sincerity of the song. Like the song's already great, but Chester just kind of going off, and like even like the way he's pulling the mic away from his vocals just to make sure that it's like permeating at that perfect cadence. Like, dude, undeniable, unfucking real.
Damn. Let's mic drop on that. Let's I don't know that we could talk probably for another hour about Linkin Park and about this record. But I think
leave Meteor next.
Yeah, I mean, that one will turn an age at some point, right? We can hit that one too. But we really appreciate anybody checking us out and checking out this particular episode, because this album meant so much to the three of us in the moment, and still clearly has, kind of tugged at our heartstrings a little bit, right? It's something that is ingrained in the fabric of Podioslave. So thank you.
And we know if you're listening, something we said triggered a memory, drop it in the comments. Let us know. We love this shit. Like that's why we do this. We do it to hang out with each other, but we do it for the relatability in the comments. And we're not the only ones that downloaded this shit, allegedly. So we'll be back. We'll be back, what, next week?
Yeah, why not?
Do it. Do it up.
Peace, potheads.
See ya.
Cheers, nerds.
Thank you for listening to Podioslave. We are at Podioslave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places that you can find us on social media. Facebook, Podioslave Podcast. YouTube, Podioslave Podcast there. Email us at podioslavepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you want to become a supporter, click on the link at the bottom of the episode and give us $1, give us $5. It keeps the lights on, keeps us going. We really appreciate that stuff. Thank you.